Today we're going to replace the fuel filter on a 1999 Mustang. Okay, the car's been backed onto wheel stands now, so we can disconnect the fuel pump shutoff switch. Disconnect the fuel cutoff switch, and then we'll run the engine to release any fuel pressure in the system. And it's located behind this panel here, so you just need to undo this clip right here and expose the switch right here. Okay, here's a close-up of the connector. So when you pull back this trim panel, there's this switch with a button on top. So that'll cut off the fuel pump if you've had a hard impact or an accident. And it's this connector in the bottom that we're going to want to pull out. But we want to put the car up on ramps before we unplug this because we want to make sure that we have the car in position before we turn off the fuel. Okay, now with the car up in jack stands, we'll disconnect the wiring harness from the fuel pump cutoff switch. So I'll just use this pry tool, pry off the connector. And then just pull up the connector here. Now we'll run the car until the engine dies. Alright, the rear end of the car. It's tire ramp with a tire on it, drive shaft, exhaust, differential, and right above the differential you can see there is the fuel filter. It doesn't look very good. It still has factory undercoating on it, which is not great. It means it's never been replaced. Appears to be oozing something, which is also problematic. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the spring clamps off of both ends, and there's a hose clamp holding it in place. So we're going to undo those and replace it with a new fuel filter. Let's start by wiping it down a little bit. This undercoating on here is might be a bit challenging for us, but it should be okay. So on each end they have these security clamps, and these are installed just so that the spring clamp doesn't accidentally come off in service. It's really unlikely that would happen, but you know, it's a nice safety feature. So you just get your flathead in there and just pry it off the best you can. And they've got retention straps here, so you can't lose them. So we'll sort of pull them out of the way. And then there's another one on the other side here. So we'll just put our flathead in here and just sort of twist it out of the way. It's a little janky in here, but there we go. And you can sort of see how it has the part that probes into the spring clamp in here. So that's basically what keeps it from coming out. Now we should undo this screw clamp here, just to make sure that we can get the fuel filter free. And it's also got it's snapped in place here with this snap holder. So then when that's loose, we can slide this out of the way, although it's not quite loose yet, or loose enough anyway. Feel bad using a flathead on this, because you can use a socket. There we go, super loose. I guess that's as good as it's going to get. Okay, now to release these spring clamps, you need a special tool, and it's one of these fuel line release tools, and I can't remember if this is a 5/16 or an F. Doesn't really matter. Well, I mean, it does matter. You need to have the right size. But essentially, you just jam it into place, and you just shove it into the end of the spring clamp here, and it comes off. Now, you might have a little bit of fuel, even though we disconnected it, so I'm just going to put my little drain bucket under here. Alright, so we had a fair amount of fuel spray out of there, so now we're going to disconnect the other one. So we're just going to jam this hose disconnect tool in here. And disconnect this other spring fitting. There we go, so now they're both free. Still a little bit of fuel coming out, so we'll just use our catch bucket. And now the fuel filter is free, so we just need to take it out and replace it with the new one. Okay, we've got our catch bucket under here catching a few drips of fuel, and so now it's time to replace the fuel filter. I like going OEM. This is the OEM fuel filter. It's a Motorcraft FG1114. And when we take it out of the box, we can see it looks to be the same size, and it's got the fuel flow arrow on there. So we know that this line here is coming from the fuel tank, because we can see it going into the fuel tank right here. And the other line's going forward to the engine, so this fuel filter is going to be installed the same way as the old fuel filter is there. So now we need to remove this fuel filter. So we'll just take off this hose here, and a few drops of fuel coming out still. And then this hose clamp we'll need to get out of the way still. And then we'll need to pull this end of the fuel filter away from the clamp, if possible. There we go. Then we'll just slide this nub out of the hose clamp and put that in our drain bucket. Get that out of the way. And then now we can put in our nice new fuel filter. So installation will be the reverse removal. We'll slide the hose clamp over the nub. We'll clip the new filter into this bracket here. There we go. Just make sure it's seated nice. Then we'll have our flow arrow there. And they'll put our hose clamp back on. So we've got our flathead screwdriver. And screw this clamp back on. It's covered in undercoating. Man, I really shouldn't be using a flathead on this. Just get lazy and it's what you have handy and you end up regretting it. There we go. We got that in place. And that looks terrible, so let's wipe it up a bit so it looks a little presentable. Let's give it the wiggle test, make sure it's in place. Okay, that's good. Now we'll put on the engine side spring clamp, and all you have to do is push it on nice and straight until you hear it click. There. That click means it's in place. And then we attach the security fitting, and again you want the barbed end to be in the hose clamp, or in the spring clamp. So you just push it in and then slide it back like that. There we go. Now we're going to repeat the same for the tank side. So we're just going to wipe off this drip here. So we're going to take the spring clamp and we're going to push it onto the filter until it clicks. There, that means it's sealed. And then we take the this barbed end is supposed to go into the spring clamp. So we push down, you can see it's entered the spring clamp, and there we go. Now have the fuel filter, the security clamps in place, and we both heard each end click into position. And we have the fuel filter installed, and the hose clamp bracket cinched up. Okay, and now we have to reconnect the electrical connector inside the fuel pump cutoff switch. So we just take the connector, stuff it back up in the bottom of the switch. Make sure it clicks. There we go. And then we can put this panel back on. Okay, at this point the fuel filter is empty and the fuel system has no pressure in it. So when you turn your key to the on position without starting the car, the fuel pump will prime. So what we're going to want to do is let it prime, so give it a couple seconds, turn it back off, turn it on again, let it prime again, and we'll turn it off, and then the third time we'll let it prime one more time, and then we'll attempt starting it. And make sure it runs okay, and if it doesn't start, just check that the fuel pump cutoff switch is plugged in correctly. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Job done.